This is definitely one of my races of the morning, I think. This could be a tight one, I think. Both crews to the barrier yesterday, there was nothing between them. We'll see how this one pans out as who deals with the conditions best.
So the Wargrave underway, Thames Rowing Club A on the Berkshire Bank, the Tideway Scullers School A on the Buck Station, and we reckon this could be a real tight contest in the next few minutes. These eights both trying to get the early initiative, and it looks like the Tideway Scullers on the Buck Station have got speed into the boat quickly. On the right of your picture, they're moving along pretty well. In fact, that's a good clean start from both boats there.
Yeah, both kept their lines. Coxswains haven't had to do any adjustments there. So crews can really get out the blocks, get that speed up. And as they move out and they start to make that transition.
This is race number 14, the penultimate race before the lunch break. And Tideway Scullers and Thames Rowing Club, there's really nothing in it. They have not split them in the early stages. I think you've called that right, Mark. This is going to be
so far.
Yeah, but all the indications are very early stages of this semi-final.
It's about getting into that pace now. That is the important, that transition into that pace that's going to carry you over this course, because it is so challenging today. It's so important.
You can see the cocks there for Tideway Scullers. Ben Rich urging his boat to keep a pace with Natalie Kernan's boat at the top of the picture. 24-year-old Ben Rich. He's gone to work here, hasn't he? Been looking after those vocal cords during the week. He can still bark the orders.
Yeah, and that, the role of the coxswain, especially in a race like this where you're side by side, has just been so clear with your instructions. They would have practiced this.
Oh, just talking about the role of the coxswains, Natalie Kernan in the Thames boat. Just for a moment, it seems to be drifting a bit central, a bit oversteering perhaps.
Yeah, that was big oversteering there. She definitely wanted to look back at that when they really kind of come back to this after this race and review what happened. But that would have definitely affected their boat speed.
It's given Tideway Scullers an opportunity there, just a little ray of sunshine for them. Can they capitalise on that? It was only quite minor, but they were just coming out into the centre of the water, and as you mentioned in earlier races, every time they have to do the steering, it takes a little bit of time out. And again.
And then it's not just that, it's trying to get the boat speed back up to where they had it before. That expenditure of energy, you know, that's what you don't want to have to do.
Yeah, you don't want to be decelerating and accelerating all the way down the course.
But the Thames crew from the image just look like the blade work is dealing with these conditions slightly better than the crew from Tideway Scullers.
So you can see the Thames Rowing Club boat to the right of the picture. See back of bow seat Amy Gibson. Second time competing at Henley Royal Regatta. Love to get to the final. Did get to the final in this event last year, Amy Gibson. And you can see in the bow seat Betty Payne for the Tideway Scullers. Started rowing at Edinburgh University. Won Henley Women's Regatta last year. The opportunity to get to a final, it's such a big moment in a rower's career, isn't it? You can look back on that every year. You come back to Henley Royal Regatta as a spectator. You can reminisce very fondly about getting to a final, stories to tell.
Yeah, those kind of reunions that crews have as well is such an important part of that. Whether they made the final or they won the event. Those kind of stories they have, as you mentioned, the kind of laughs in training, the hard work, the battles they went through.
Some very angry sounding geese cheering them along. So we're watching Thames Rowing Club on the Berkshire Station. Gibson we've mentioned in the bow seat. Taylor, Calotti, Sharp, Cole Hussein, Rogerson, Davis, and then Jessica Eastwood in the stroke seat. Little glance over the shoulder from the cox. Kernan checking on where the Tideway Scullers are. As she glanced to her right, she'll see that they've got clear water. I suspect a move will come from them to try and put this race to bed in front of the Remnant enclosure, Remnant Club, and moving towards the regatta enclosure. Full of intent, both these boats are having a real good fight here, and actually some credit to Tideway Scullers, who have been down for about the same margin for most of this race. They're keeping it competitive, definitely.
Yeah, they're trying to keep in contact. The contact has been broken, but they're not letting it drift any further. And can they somehow get back in contact? That's going to be really interesting in the next 200 metres, because if they can't, Thames will continue this distance and just obviously move on across the line first. If nothing goes wrong, which we obviously hope doesn't happen. But if Tideway can get a sniff and then their athletes can grow in confidence.
Well, it's a big role for Ben Ritchie, you can see there, the Cox, to try and incentivise, motivate those athletes to give everything they've got. He needs to convince them that they are in touching distance.
And what we talked about was the challenge, anything can happen at any point, so being in a position to capitalise on an error, especially in this boat type, that can slow the hull down immensely.
Well, Thames Rowing Club, who beat Riverside Boat Club from the USA yesterday, have been foot perfect so far, still with a few hundred metres remaining as they hit the regatta enclosure. Amy Gibson, you can see there in the shot, in the bow seat, hoping to be first over the line here. But Tideway Scullers are just refusing to give up. They won't be shaken off.
No. This is semi-final day, isn't it? Every dreams of making it to the next phase or next step into the final.
Yeah, it's now or never. Tideway Scullers School, what have they got? They got one last push, one last move in them. It's going to take some turnaround now. These bigger boats, it's more difficult, isn't it, to transfer the lead. You might have something happening here. Let's have a look at the steering from Thames Rowing Club. They were just again heading out to the middle of the water, but they're rectifying that quickly enough.
There has been some quite aggressive steering there, which is it necessary? I don't know what's happened, but it's just something to be aware of when you come into the next race or the big final. You don't want to disrupt that whole speed.
So things to reflect on from that semi-final performance for Natalie Kernan, the Cox in Thames Rowing Club, and her 8. That they have done enough. They could never really shake off the Tideway Scullers School. They always had a length, and they always looked the more competent of the two, the faster of the two, but they would have enjoyed a greater lead. Obviously, it was hard work for them, but they're there now into the final tomorrow. Thames Rowing Club in the Wargrave Challenge Cup, beating the Tideway Scullers School by just over a length. That was the margin for most of the race, and that's how it finishes.
Yeah, that Thames crew really took the advantage early, maintained that. There was a few challenging moments with the steering, just needs to be a bit more delicate with that when it comes to the big race tomorrow, but yeah, always kind of just out of touch, and Tideway just couldn't get on level terms.